The smell reached him before the sound. Raw petroleum braided with scorched sage and the faint, metallic tang that always seeped from the broken earth after the strikes. Raven paused atop the crumbled outer wall of the refinery. The whole plain of dust-grayed olive trees spread beneath him like the print of an ancient hand. A morning wind hissed through the leafless groves, carrying motes of ash that never seemed to settle anymore. Somewhere far off a dog barked once, twice, and then nothing but the flick of plastic ribbons nailed to dead branches. Sentinel flags for a kingdom of ruins. Raven, Alvaro once, before the war names, shifted the heavy canvas satchel on his shoulder and slipped through a breach in the corrugated siding. Inside, the refinery's vast skeleton lay in half-shadow, sun shafts slanting through holes in the roof to stripe the rusted pipes. 8 years of neglect had silenced the roar of pumps and towers, but under the hush he could still feel the heartbeat of the place. The slow drip of crude, the whisper of vapor venting from cracked manifolds, the dull gong of metal cooling in dawn air. He took the quick way, grappling ladder, catwalk, leap across a sagging beam, his boots remembering every wobble and burr. This was the maze he had claimed after the fires, the one map he kept only in his head. Below, pools of black water mirrored the sagging sky. Above, the distillation columns rose like petrified giants, their flanks pocked by shrapnel scars and spray-painted warnings. "And oh God's here," another hand had written, and beneath it a simpler, older plea that war had never answered. Quiero vivir. Raven crouched at column 3. A brittle conduit had popped open where heat once ran. Now it wept a steady thread of amber condensate. He set a tin can beneath the leak, watched it tick fuller, shimmer thicker. This cut was better than anything he'd found last week. Maybe 80 octane if luck held. Enough to trade for antibiotics, salt pork, fresh water pulled from Mesquita wells. Enough, perhaps, to keep the commons alive another 10 days. He knelt to taste a drop, the way old Eugenio had taught him. Let it sit a heartbeat on the tongue, swish it toward the teeth, feel the sting. Gasoline, yes, but clean, almost sweet. None of the sulfur backnote that meant engine killer. Perfect. He grinned, a quick flash of teeth in grime, and slipped a cork into the can's mouth. Voices rattled up the column's stairwell. He froze. "Told you the kid runs this tower. Mendoza swears by it. Swear all he wants. Boss wants product, not rumors." Boots clanged on iron. Los perros. Raven flattened to the grating, heartbeat stuttering. Perros always hunted in pairs. One for the barrel, one for the boy who dared keep it. He slid backward on elbows till darkness swallowed him, then dropped soundless to the scaffold below. The can he'd just filled he tucked into the folds of his jacket. The rest could wait. 20 meters beneath, dawn stained the refinery's ground level in stripes of dirty ochre. Escape. He took the western vent ladder, counting heartbeats as he descended. 3 levels down, a new noise bled in, metal buzz of a drone. Recon quadcopter, probably guard issue, though who could tell these days. The Spanish guard had fractured after Cordoba's firestorm. Half the ranks gone merc, the other half garrisoning whatever enclave paid hardest. Some wore the old flags, others sewed red dragonflies on their sleeves, the emblem of the coalition shadow market that had crept west behind the radiation clouds. Raven wondered which flag circled above him now. A searchlight beam lanced the catwalk just above. The drone whirred closer. He dropped to the darkness under the stairs, heart banging his ribs. 2 threats, 1 refinery. Someone would die today, Eugenio always said. It needn't be you. But the can in his jacket grew heavier by the breath. Suddenly stupid risk, heavy yet impossible to surrender. Within its thin walls, every swallow of fuel spelled food for the commons, and food meant survival. When the drone veered toward the tower's crown, Raven bolted for the ragged hole in the west wall. The refinery's yard sprawled before him, an obstacle course of toppled drums, weed-choked rails, and radioactive warning posts that no one respected anymore. Beyond the yard rose the sun-plated domes of Cordoba proper, glazed now with the iridescent sheen of fallout. The Mesquita's lone, surviving minaret jutted like a broken rib. Somewhere inside that Gothic Moorish labyrinth lived 200 humans clinging to the last civil words left to them. We share or we vanish. Raven's commons. He sprinted, weaving. His boots splashed through runoff. Twice he slid on oily mud. Almost fell, righted. The drone's engine flared behind. A predator circle. Winded, he dived behind the husk of a fuel truck. Overhead, the copter's lens swept the yard, red diode pulsing. It paused, whined, turned away. Raven exhaled. A new clatter. The Perros bursting from the breach he'd fled moments before. Their leader, a tall woman in a scavenged ballistic vest with half a wolf stenciled on the plate, saw the truck rocking. She barked. Men fanned out, rifles lifted. Raven's fingers brushed cold steel. A loosened bolt on the truck's fuel manifold. An idea sparked. He twisted the bolt free, smelled the faint ghost of diesel still inside the line, and yanked. A gout of vapor hissed. The Perros heard it. They slowed, muzzles questing. He fished a striker from his pocket, struck once, twice. On the third scrape, a single star of orange leapt into the diesel fog. Then the world became thunder. Fire rolled over the yard, flinging Raven and truck alike. He hit gravel, skidded, ears ringing. Amid the roar he heard screams. Men, drone, metal. He crawled, jacket ablaze, padded flames, staggered upright. The refinery's western face glowed furnace red, sending up a column of greasy smoke visible all the way to the Guadalquivir. But no one blocked the fence gate now. Raven limped through twisted mesh and down the slope toward the river road. He did not look back until the refinery roof caved in with a howl like mountains breaking. Day's edge found him at the commons, crouched in an alcove of collapsed Roman brick beneath the Mezquita's shadow. Violetta, youngest of the water runners, unwrapped his bandaged arm, whistled. "Perros again?" "Truck blew," he rasped. His throat tasted of diesel, lungs scraped raw by smoke. "Blow up enough wolves, you'll anger the pack." "Pack's already angry." He unclipped the fuel can from under his jacket, set it between them. "More than the council asked." Violetta peered at the shimmering liquid as though it were holy. "We can barter this for 2 weeks' rations. Maybe beans and rice, maybe even citrus from the north." Her voice slipped into awe. "You saved us again, Raven." He shook his head. Wind teased black hair across his eyes. "Saved? I torched half the only refinery left this side of Madrid. There'll be others tomorrow, and they'll bring more guns." She sealed the can, touched her forehead to its warm tin. "Then bring more cunning." Her smile, small and tired, flickered. "Eugenio says war favors those who adapt." Eugenio, the old chem engineer who taught Raven to read cracking columns like constellations, hobbled out of the gloom, his cane tapping. "War also favors those who know when to run," he said, voice papery but iron beneath. "And run you must, boy. Los Perros will know your face after today." The drone caught images. Andrada spies will sell them by nightfall. Andrada! Raven's mouth went hollow. General Salvador Andrada, once of the Spanish army, now satrap of the southern corridors, the man who leased safe passage to anyone with silver or secrets. His red dragonfly battalions moved like whispers. One day controlling the old airport, next day the phosphate mines, always where profit flowed. Eugenio nodded. His agents pay for fuel, sure, but they'll pay more for a refiner who can conjure it out of rust. "That means you." The old man's eyes shone with proud grief. "You've grown beyond scout, but leaders draw crosshairs." Raven flexed smoke-scraped fingers. "If we cut production, the commons starves. If we keep, everyone comes hunting." He looked up at the Mezquita's cracked dome, radioactive dust glittering in dusk like false stars. "What if we trade openly? Not drips and cans, but real barrels, staged under daylight where every faction sees the weight of their need." Eugenio's brow creased, half admiration, half fear. "You'd build a market in hell." "A market," Raven said, voice hardening. "Or a shield. If everyone profits, maybe they hesitate to kill the source. Or they slit your throat and take the spigot." "Then I die," Raven answered. "But the idea lives. Somebody will keep the flow." "Violetta, anyone hungry enough. Oil smells like life now. They'll protect it." Silence spread. thick as the evening dust. Finally, Eugenio exhaled. A council vote, then. If they agree, we risk it. They'll agree, Violetta said softly. They always do when they see hope. Raven started to protest that he was no beacon, no banner to rally. But even as he opened his mouth, he felt a new weight settle across his shoulders. Not the satchel, not the day's grind, something else. The slow, inexorable pull of other people's survival. Leadership, whispered some memory of a history lesson, is the art of answering need with will. He rose. Over the rooftops, flames still licked the horizon where the refinery burned. Yet between those ragged plumes, a deeper glow now threaded upward. Faint but unmistakable, northern lights unleashed by high-atmosphere bursts. Green curtains rippling across Iberian night since the first low-yield detonations months ago. Beauty born from terror. A warning and a promise both. Raven squared his shoulders. Summon the council. At dawn we ride for the ruins of the Alcazar. That's where the market begins. They gathered in the Alcazar's shattered gardens beneath statues long since headless. 21 delegates, one for each cluster of survivors who swore loyalty, or at least tentative truce, to the commons. The pool where princes once sailed toy galleys was now a concrete scar lined with solar stills. Orange plastic sheets caught morning sun, distilling dew into glass jars. Around its rim, chairs scavenged from hotels and churches formed a ring of uneasy power. Raven stood at the center, sandaled feet on cracked mosaic. Behind him lay 3 steel drums daubed with white numerals. 92, 87, diesel. That trinity could run anything from motorcycles to the hospital generator. The barrels were mostly full. He'd siphoned all night, Violetta swapping hoses, other runners lugging buckets under fits of coughing while the distant refinery smoldered like a dying god. He spoke without preamble. Fuel for food, fuel for medicine, fuel for ammunition against the raiders who circle us all. The refinery still bleeds. He lifted a battered dipstick, black slicked. I can make it flow cleaner, safer, but only if the commons protects the site together. We share watch, share haul, share profit. His gaze cut around the ring. Or else Perros, dragonflies, or whatever banner marches next will carve us apart one barrio at a time. Murmurs. An old woman with milky eyes, Sava, voice of the eastern refugees, leaned forward. Child, you propose an empire of oil amid famine. Empires birth wars. Wars already burned the world, Raven replied. What's left is barter or oblivion. A one-armed guard veteran spat. Barter with pirates? I fought Andrada's men. They don't trade, they tax. Then we price the tax into every barrel, Raven said. We make their greed our buffer. Sava's cloudy stare sharpened. Bold. And if Los Perros arrive tonight, we'll be waiting with guns bought by today's sale. He flipped a coin toward the veteran. A flattened NATO slug, hole punched through the eagle. Down payment on new fortifications. Silence stretched again, tension crackling like static over a live wire. Raven could almost hear hearts ticking, weighing fear against hunger. Then Violetta stepped beside him, lifted a jar of clear gasoline, and drank a symbolic drop. Her face twisted, but she swallowed, held up the jar. Taste your tomorrow, she said, voice ringing like steel on glass. Or eat your memories. That broke the dam. One by one delegates nodded. Hands lifted. Even Sava, after a long breath, raised her cane in assent. The council's verdict rolled around the pool. We trade. Only then did Raven allow himself the ember of triumph. He turned to the barrels, rapped each drum with his knuckles. A hollow anthem. First auction at sundown. Spread word through every corridor. Eugenio's eyes glimmered with wet pride. You just painted a beacon bright enough for the whole war to see. Raven straightened. In the distance, the drone's faint insect whine returned, scouting new ruins. Beyond, a smudge of armored trucks crawled the northern road. Perhaps merchants, perhaps marauders, in this age sometimes the same. And somewhere out there, wolf badges sniffed soot, dragonflies traced profit, and generals polished maps that no longer matched the world. He felt the refinery's pulse haunted under his skin. Each drip another second on the fuse of destiny. Fuel for food, yes, but also fuel for bullets, fuel for power, fuel for the engines of ambitions too large to name. He had opened a spigot in hell. Now he must learn to ride the fire. Night would fall soon, bringing buyers and killers, and the first true test of his newborn market. Raven exhaled, tasting faint gasoline on the wind, and wondered how many tomorrows the smell of oil could buy before the world finally ran out of mercy. The first auction opened under lamps powered by makeshift dynamos, their filaments breathing yellow halos into the ruined courtyard of the Alcazar. Raven stood near the barrels with Violetta, Eugenio, and 6 rifle-armed volunteers whose patched jackets bore no faction badge, only a rough white crescent hand-painted on the sleeve, the sign of the Commons. Smoke from burning olive wood curled around bidding circles chalked on shattered tiles, the scent mingled with diesel and fried chickpea batter warming on iron griddles, an aroma so homelike it hurt. Buyers arrived in uneven waves. The first were simple transporters, 2 Andalusian farm trucks rebuilt on tractor engines, their drivers offering sacks of dried lentils, car batteries, rolls of speaker wire. Next came a meta-caravan whose emblem was a snake wrapped around a cracked USB stick. They spread gauze, expired antibiotics, algae protein bars. Raven took everything, scribbling credits on 10 chits stamped with the shadow of the Mezquita, currency only here, yet suddenly coveted. Wealth, he realized, was simply belief wearing metal. Then a hush swept the courtyard, Los Perros. 5 of them, 3 men, 2 women, filed under the arch, rifles cradled low. Their leader, the same tall woman from the refinery, removed her helmet. A scar shaped like quotation marks bracketed her mouth, lending permanent irony. She spoke first. "They say you burned half my pack for those drums." "I lit my escape," Raven answered. "Your men chose the path." "Andrada's dragonflies pay double for good fuel," she said, ignoring the jab. "I'll match them." She tossed a cloth bundle at his feet and throw in silence on your face. Raven unwrapped the bundle. Inside lay 2 matte black pistol slides, pristine, NATO make. In a world of jam-prone relics, such steel was gold. He looked up. "I prefer not to be owned." Her laugh clanged off broken walls. "Owned? Kid, I'm freeing you from petty bartering to real stakes. The moment Andrada rolls in, you'll wish we'd branded you first." Across the firelight, the meta-caravan leader stepped forward. "This is neutral ground, Wolf. Lower your voice or walk." An unstrapped shotgun hung across his chest. Tension twanged. Raven raised his hand. "Fuel flows to any who pay, no guns at the drums. That's the rule." The wolf scar smiled thinly. "Rules crumble quicker than walls." Yet she signaled her pack. They stepped back, presenting their offer, for cases of canned fish, Atlantic stock caught before the blockade, each tin worth a week of protein. Raven accepted. A volunteer siphoned 20 liters of diesel into a jerry can stamped with a snarling dog skull. Trade churned until moonrise painted the battlements silver. Ravens' ledger counted beans, voltage regulators, rolls of antibiotic mesh, enough to feed the Commons a month, maybe 2. He felt giddy, drunk on possibility, until a new hum pricked his ears. Rotor blades, heavy, near. Headlights flared at the palace gate. An armored half-track crawled in, paint flaked but insignia unmistakable, a red dragonfly poised over flame. The machine's turret kept level with the courtyard as its rear hatch clanged open. General Salvador Andrada emerged in a black field coat, bareheaded, hair snow-white against feverish skin. Time had carved deeper trenches into his cheeks, but his eyes still burned with the computed hunger of men who survive by anticipating everyone else's. 2 escorts flanked him, one a thin clerk with a datapad, the other a broad woman in an ex-NATO exoskeleton whose servos hissed with every step. Conversations died. Even the Perros shifted uncertainly, alliances twisted when dragonflies landed. Andrada walked straight to Raven as though following a laser line. "I studied your refinery blast today," he said in crisp Castilian. "Inventive trap. Tell me, boy, what volume remains extractable?" "Enough to matter," Raven replied, heart hammering but voice calm. "Enough to keep everyone's wheels turning." "Everyone?" Andrada's smile cut. "That suggests equal distribution." History teaches unequal distribution is the engine of progress. Progress one direction, Raven shot back, slavery the other. Andrada chuckled. "Bold tongue? I admire boldness until it impedes order. My engineers can refine crude more efficiently than a renegade teen and a crippled professor. Yet you occupy the site. So here's my first and final offer: dragonfly protection, advanced cracking equipment, antibiotics in bulk, radiation filters for your wells, all in exchange for a 70% share of output." Fair, given I relieve you of raider attacks and technical peril. Violetta's hand tightened on Raven's arm. He heard Eugenio's labored breathing behind. Around them, buyers edged aside, waiting to see whether the market spark would gutter under politics. Raven answered slowly. Protection that makes us your serfs isn't protection. Decline. Gasps fluttered. The Wolfscar woman barked a short laugh, even she hadn't expected refusal so blunt. Andrada's gaze cooled. Decline at your peril. When my convoy leaves this courtyard, the calculus changes, partners become obstacles. Raven met the general's stare. Obstacles can turn valves shut. Destruction is cheaper than submission. For a moment the knight balanced on a blade. Then Andrada sighed, strangely wistful. A pity. Fire chooses its path. He signaled. The clerk tapped a code into the datapad. The exoguard spun, launching a mini drone into the sky. Its red diode winked like an omen as it streaked northward. Andrada climbed back into the half-track. One sunrise, perhaps two, he called from the hatch, and then you'll learn what obstacle means. The vehicle rumbled away, crushing mosaic under treads. Silence held until engines faded. Raven exhaled shakily. The courtyard erupted, buyers shouting, volunteers questioning, Perros snarling about double-cross. Raven raised both hands. No panic. We finish tonight's trade, then plan for siege. Everything and everyone moves to the refinery by dawn. It's easier to defend one heartbeat than two. The Wolfscar woman tilted her head. You invite us into your den after torching ours? Trade sustains, Raven said. Enemies yesterday can be shields tomorrow if the terms align. She studied him, lips quirked. Name's Loba. She extended a gloved hand. Perros fight for scent of profit. Let's see whether oil smells sweeter than blood. They shook. Relocation began in dark pre-dawn. Long lines of carts, hand-pushed gurneys, donkey packs wound from the Mezquita district toward the refinery's skeletal bulk. The sky to the east glimmered with distant flashes, intermittent artillery across the coastal corridor where coalition marines probed NATO holdouts, but here only jackhawls cried among olive groves. Raven rode at the convoy's head astride a sputtering moped, Violetta on pillion, rifle across her back. When they crested the final ridge, torches revealed another procession approaching from the south, pilgrims under the banner of a red crescent fused with gears, mechanics from Seville who'd caught rumor of cheap fuel. Trade had magnetism, risk meant little when engines thirsted. Raven ordered lamps raised atop the cracking towers, painting the refinery in glowing amber like a beacon for every deserter, smuggler, or farmer within 30 kilometers. As dawn bled over busted domes, the Common's new fortress came alive. Volunteers welded sheet metal across breaches, stacked sandbags, dragged anti-tank caltrops salvaged from a NATO depot. Eugenio supervised reconnection of dormant pumps, his bony hands fluttered over valves as if mending an old organ. In the control shed, Raven spread Andrada's offer ledger beside maps crudely stitched from drone images. He circled approaching roads, estimating arrival times for Dragonfly armor at 40 kilometers with fuel convoys, likely midday. We need a mode of flame, he told Loba, now head of perimeter detail. Flood outer ditches with crude, rig ignition wires to the central switchboard. Dangerous near storage tanks, she warned. Less dangerous than tanks under enemy guns. He traced fallback lines. If they breach fence 2, blow the pipe loop beneath them. Collateral heat will liquefy steel. Loba grinned wolfishly. I like this boy. By late morning, clouds bruised overhead, promising acid rain. Scouts reported dust columns on the North Highway, Dragonfly Vanguard, 2 armored cars, 1 rocket truck. Raven mounted Tower 7 with binoculars. The enemy vehicles' paint shone wet red in first drops, their turret barrels tracked like hunt hounds. Below, refugees who'd come to trade watched with wide eyes. Some considered flight, others hid behind barrels. Raven called a meeting on the loading platform. We cannot outgun them, he said, but we can outvalue them. If Andrada shells the refinery, he loses the prize. We must show him destruction costs more than concession. Sava, the old council elder, coughed. Show him how. Hostage, Loba said. All turned. She pointed at the stacked barrels. Not people. Potential. Ignite 1 column behind us, demonstration only. He'll taste vapor and know the next blast swallows him. Eugenio grimaced. A refinery is a domino. 1 tower goes, the whole tree burns. Then we burn a branch, not the trunk, Raven decided. Old cooling pond still holds sludge. We flood a ditch, light it when his lead car enters visual. Risk insane, but time thin. Workers rerouted sludge through cracked pipes to the northern moat. Raven stood with flare gun as Andrada's convoy halted half a kilometer away in open field. The general's voice crackled on wideband speaker. Last chance, boy. Surrender sight. Raven fired. The flare arched pink across gray sky, landing in viscous oil. Flame roared blue-orange, a dragon tongue-licking rain. Heat slammed refinery walls, watchers cried out. But containment held, the ditch burned like a river of molten gold without touching towers. Andrada's lead car reversed, turret swiveling uncertain. Through binoculars, Raven saw the general lean forward, expression unreadable. Minutes stretched. Then the convoy engines growled, vehicles backed out of range, repositioning on the higher ridge. They'll shell from distance, Violetta whispered. Let them, Raven answered. Eugenio, steam pressure reading? Climbing, the old man replied over handset. Purged oxidizer lines ready for injection when you call. Raven keyed mic to the general's channel. Your next shell hits a boiler loaded with wet steam at fracture threshold. Explosion radius swims outward 10 times your shell yield. You bomb us, we scorch earth and sky. Static. Then Andrada's voice, softer. You'd risk your own people to spite me? I risk them every minute. You threaten life worth nothing without freedom. Thunder cracked, not from artillery but the brewing storm. Acid droplets hissed on hot metal. Finally, the Dragonfly's convoy engines throttled. Turrets lowered, cars pivoted south. A roar of relief broke from the refinery. Yet Raven watched through lenses until red tail lights blurred into rain, uneasy. Retreat could mask flanking. Night fell like a wet sack. Scouts reported Dragonflies entrenching near the Guadalquivir bridge, blocking routes to eastern trade towns, strangulation rather than assault. Raven gathered counsel in the cracked control room. We survived day one, he began, but siege will choke us. Dragonflies will tax every inbound caravan, starve us of buyers. We need corridors beyond their grid. Sava's milky eyes gleamed. There is the Basura garbage lands west of the hills. No patrol dares there since chemical fires. Trade can't cross toxic geysers, argued the medic leader. People can, Raven countered, if given reason. Andrada's chokehold might prove worse than poison fog. Eugenio tapped the map. Another option. Underground pipeline once ran from here to the old airport fuel depot near Isija. Disused, likely ruptured, but segments remain. If we pressurize with compressed air, we could push gasoline 30 kilometers under Dragonfly nets, surface at clandestine taps. Hope flickered. Raven gripped the old man's shoulder. Show me schematics. For 3 days they hunted diagrams in scorched offices, piecing route shards from water-stained binders. Lobos Perros scouted shafts buried beneath subdivisions. Workers jury-rigged compressors from tractor engines, welding scrap to seal bridges. Meanwhile, Andrada's siege tightened, patrols stopped convoys, levied tariffs, turned back those refusing. The refinery courtyard emptied, trade shriveled to locals on foot. Morale dipped? Acid rains peeled paint, stung eyes. Raven paced catwalks at night hearing whispers. Some said surrender a share to Dragonflies, others feared inevitable assault with heavier ordnance. He felt each doubt like rust chewing his scaffold. Leadership, he learned, wasn't holding courage but grafting courage into others when your own bones trembled. On the fifth dawn an explosion rattled the northwest quadrant, compressor valve blew, killing a mechanic. Raven helped drag the body, hands shaking. Sabotage rumors swirled. Loba interrogated workers, found no clear traitor. But fear's toxin spread faster than crude. That night Raven climbed the tallest distillation tower alone. Rain had cleared, the sky cracked with auroras, nuclear ghosts dancing green curtains overhead. He remembered childhood before war, when Cordoba nights were velvet black, when the only sky fire came from festivals. He felt the refinery's pulse underfoot, each pump stroke sinking with his heart. How long could they juggle fire? Boots clanged behind. Violetta joined him, face lit by aurora. You push too hard, she said. Sleep matters. Sleep later. He traced the horizon where dragonfly campfires dotted ridges. If we don't finish the pipeline, siege wins. Violetta touched his arm. You shoulder everything. Let others bleed their share. That's what commons means. He met her gaze, the earnest ferocity there scared him more than bombs. In that stare, he saw the commons' faith coalescing around his silhouette as if survival welded them to his decisions. If he crumbled, structure fell. Lightning flared far east, mother storm over the Mediterranean. A thought sparked. Storefront, he whispered. Eugenio's flow calculations assume steady pressure. A surge of barometric drop could boost throughput. Violetta laughed softly. Always numbers. Numbers keep us alive. He embraced her sudden, surprising himself. She stiffened, then relaxed into the warmth, both smelling of oil and ash and something like clinging hope. Below, alarms whooped, motion sensors on north fence. They broke apart, rushing down ladders. Gate lights fixed on a lone figure stumbling across puddled forecourt, hands raised. Cloaks battered with mud, no weapon. Guards nearly shot, but Raven recognized the stance, military but broken. He sprinted to intercept. The figure collapsed. Raven rolled him over. Half his face blistered, chemical burns, chessboard dragonfly insignia torn half off. The soldier's eyes, bloodshot, locked onto Raven's. "Message for Raven," he croaked. "I'm Raven. General wants parley, dawn, at bridge." The man coughed foam. "Says pipeline, sabotage, sabotage," breath hitched. He seized Raven's collar. "He knows. Trait, life left between syllables." Raven eased him down, heart pounding. "Get Eugenio," he ordered. "And Loba. We prepare." Gray morning steamed off asphalt by the river bridge. Raven rode with Loba, Violetta, and 2 guard trucks towing white flags. On opposite side, dragonflies arrayed, 3 vehicles, turrets down. Andrada waited midspan, coat snapping and wind smelling of wet soot. Raven dismounted. No armor, only a pistol visible, show of trust or arrogance. Andrada mirrored, stepping forward. They met a broken median, each beyond easy sniper range of their ranks. The general spoke first. "Sabotage was mine. Your pipeline threatened my leverage. Yet I send envoy to talk. Why? Because rumor says you'll burn everything before surrendering. I believe it." Raven said nothing. Andrada sighed. "I studied Clausewitz. War is politics by other means. Politics is economics at gunpoint. You make economics bleed. My investors in Tangier lose patience. They require revenues steadier than your rebellion." Raven's jaw clenched. "So you throttle trade. Until acquisition by diplomacy. But your people endure. Impressive. My board offers compromise." He produced a data chip. Coordinates of 3 fuel caches north of Toledo, pre-war aviation stock, pristine. Yours if you accept 40% partnership and exclusive pipeline rights to Mediterranean ports. Raven's heartbeat faltered at the magnitude, enough fuel to light Iberia. Yet Andrada's exclusivity meant other factions strangled. He pictured farmers queuing, Perros scowling, but peaceful, medics smiling with gauze. All that would morph into toll gates and tides. "No," he said quietly. Andrada's brow rose. "Refusal again? Common stands neutral. Equal sale or nothing." The general's eyes chilled. "Then you leave me single route, erase competitive node, seize residue." He pocketed chip. "Tonight I launch ballistic incendiaries. Your walls melt." Raven swallowed dread. "You'll poison half Andalusia. History demands sacrifice." Andrada turned. "Pray to whichever god survived." He walked off. Raven retreated to his convoy, mind screaming. On return to refinery, storm clouds again muscled sky, low and violet, perfect bounce for incendiaries. He convened council, voice bare. Eugenio proposed evacuation. Sava argued stand fast. Loba offered Perros exfil tunnels. Voices overlapped. Raven closed eyes. Algerian caches, if he could hijack them first, leverage shifts. But distance too great under siege. Unless he opened eyes. "We steal Andrada's strike." Silence fell. "He'll launch from mobile rail Northridge," Raven continued. "Sabotage the munitions en route, make them misfire, maybe detonate in his camp." Loba whistled. "Tidy mutiny." But rail yard guarded, code sealed. Raven looked to Violetta. "Your cousin worked Dragonfly munitions last year? She escaped Port Rhoda before blockade. She knows override loops." "Find her," he said. "Tonight we ride light, 3 bikes through Basura Ravine. Dragonflies won't expect incursion through toxic field. If we breach yard and plant code Wraith, Andrada's rockets turn to ash." Council balked at suicidal bent. Raven countered with simple truth. If strike lands, refinery dies, towns starve. Risk symmetric. Eugenio laid a shaky hand on his student's shoulder. "Raven, even if you succeed, Andrada will vendetta forever. I'll deal with tomorrow after saving today." Preparations spun, gas masks repurposed, Basura maps studied, bikes tuned with ethanol blends. At dusk, Loba pressed a dog tag into Raven's palm. "For my first kill," she said. "Token of cunning. Bring it back or don't bother returning." Violetta handed him a small glass vial, clear gasoline from first barrel they ever traded. "So you remember why?" He nodded, heavy with memory, Dawn's statistics now blood real. They rode at moonrise, engines ghost quiet, weaving into Basura's ashen gorges where fluorescent fungi glowed and puddles fizzed gray smoke. Twice they diverted round geysers of toxic steam. Gas mask filters clogged, they swapped cartridges, lungs burning. Hours bled. Near midnight they sighted Dragonfly rail yard, floodlit beneath crumbling viaduct. 12 launch containers aligned like coffin lids cruised loading incendiary payloads, phosphor gel bricks capable of turning river into flame. Guards lounged by barrels of bitter coffee. Raven, Violetta, her cousin Layla, and Loba crept through junk heaps. Layla torqued open a maintenance grate, slipped under car. She whispered code lines while soldering a chip onto control bus. Every heartbeat felt like shell click. A guard approached for cigarette. Raven tensed, readying suppressed pistol. Loba tapped shoulder, wait. The guard paused, lit his smoke, wandered off. Ship fused. Layla gestured thumbs. They crawled back, bikes throttled low. An hour before dawn they cleared Basura. First birds ran ghost notes over skyline. Back at refinery they braced. At 6:03 alarms detected launch plume, dragonfly rockets arcing. Refinery volunteers watched vapor trails curve, stall, shiver, then descend back toward origin. 30 seconds later the northern ridge burst white, then scarlet chain blasts. Fireball bloomed, reflection shimmering on metal drums like sunrise from hell. Cheers erupted, tears, laughter, but Raven felt only hollowness, knowing bodies incinerated under his sabotage. Necessary? Perhaps. But line blurred. Leadership had turned hands to assassination. Radio crackled, dragonfly frequencies screaming orders, chaos. By noon scouts confirmed Andrada unaccounted, command structure fractured. Harrows seized toll posts, medic caravans rolled unmolested. Refugees streamed back to refinery seeking trade. Raven addressed assembly atop cracked loading crane. Dragonfly siege broken, he announced. Roars answered, but vacuum invites new predators. We fortify, we govern fair, or cycle repeats. Sava raised Cain. You led us through fire, lead now to harvest. Voices chanted Raven's war name, echoing off tanks. Voron, Voron, Raven in Slav tongue, spark turned beacon. He gazed over faces alight with fragile hope, felt exhaustion crash, yet spirit lift, a paradox he must learn to bear. War still raged across oceans, bombs still blossomed in distant skies, but amid wreckage, markets could breed cooperation, perhaps even rebirth. He inhaled. The air still reeked of petroleum, but underneath lingered new undertone, smoke of dying tyrant camp, and maybe scent of dawn. The refinery never truly slept after the Dragonfly collapse. Pumps thudded through every hour, breathing vapor into cracked manifolds. Flood lamps bathed the grounds in a perpetual dusk, so that even midnight looked like an overcast noon. Raven moved through that dim glow half in dream, half in calculation. His days melted into their tasks. Securing trade pacts with caravans from the Tagus corridor, negotiating ceasefiring lines between rival Peros cells, coaxing turbines back to life with Eugenio's battered slide rule. The commons had swollen from 200 souls to nearly 800 in a month, and every new mouth arrived with its own desperation, its own gun, its own story of highways rhymed in fallout snow. He felt the weight of each arrival as an invisible ledger in his skull. Liters in, calories out, voltage across, morale up or down. Once, leadership had seemed a single bright blade. Now it was a dozen serpents tying themselves around his ribs. Some nights, after all lights dimmed, he climbed Tower 10 and watched the ghost lights over the Atlantic where tactical nukes still winked beyond the curvature. Each distant flash reminded him that his triumph against Andrada was only a ripple in a sea of war. The first real crack came not from outside, but inside his newborn order, quiet, almost polite. A delegation of Seville mechanics requested private audience. In the engine hall, echoing with turbine coughs, their spokesman, a broad-shouldered artisan named Doria, stepped forward wearing a grin too fixed to be friendly. "We appreciate the open market," he began, voice syrup smooth, "but fair share only carries us so far. Our shops retool civilian trucks into armored carriers. That requires steady allotments, more than the current ration." Raven folded arms. "Every faction gets equal leaders per barter weight. Adjust your trade offers." Doria's smile tightened. "Machinists bring value beyond trade, defense, manufacturing, repair. Increase our quota or we find alternative suppliers." Violetta, standing beside Raven, snorted. "Alternative?" Dragonflies scattered, coalition lines bombed. Peros steal more than sell. "True," Doria agreed. "But rumors travel. A convoy from the Algarve claims new wells near Huelva, untapped offshore storage. They're willing to barter exclusively." He leaned in, voice dropping. "They also carry SAM launchers. Choose which side controls your skies. Threat cloaked as commerce. Raven felt heat climb his spine. He held it in check. If they have fuel, they still need refining, stabilizers, anti-gel. Their wells won't run jets. You walk from us, your carriers stall. Doria chuckled. Then perhaps both sides weaken and Perros eat the crumbs. He bowed theatrically. Think on it, Voron. They left, oily echoes fading down corridor. Raven turned to Eugenio, who had listened from a workbench. The elder's face was drawn, almost gray. They bluff, Raven muttered. Maybe, Eugenio said, or maybe they test your resolve. Every empire seeds its own oppositions. Raven rubbed his temples. We're not empire. We're survival knitting itself together. And survival breeds politics the way crude breeds fire. The old man returned to his schematics, but his shoulders sagged as though the weight of prophecy bent them. Tension thickened over the next 10 days. Reports came of mechanics hoarding fuel cans, bribing guards at night, smuggling diesel beyond checkpoints. Loba intercepted one load, confiscated it, and the courtyards erupted into shouting duels where wrenches flashed like knives. Sava's council convened emergency debates that stretched till dawn, but each motion to penalize the machinists dissolved under fear of civil fracture. Meanwhile, north beyond the Guadalquivir, a power vacuum birthed something worse than dragonflies. Drone scouts spotted columns of irregulars flying a black flag etched with a white atom symbol, the New Dawn Collective. They preached purification through controlled nuclear renewal, claiming the first strikes 8 years ago had only half-cleansed the Earth. Now they gathered war chemists, captured microreactors, and fabricated dirty bombshells. When Raven briefed the council, a dry chill fell across the chamber. Violetta whispered, "A cult with isotopes. They captured Asija 2 nights ago," Raven said, tapping a rough map. "Took the desal plant intact. If they push south, they starve us of river water." Sava exhaled a cracked sigh. "Then we shall parley?" "Fanatics don't parley," Loba growled. "They convert or incinerate." Raven stared at the map's red arrow creeping toward Cordoba and felt time contract. 2 fronts. Internal fracturing, external zealots. Solve one, the other blooms. Leadership again, the serpent knot. He ordered midnight courier teams to every loyal enclave, calling for volunteers, iodine tablets, lead sheeting for makeshift rad shields. Most critical, he instructed Eugenio to audit every radiation suit in their stores. The old engineer frowned. "We have suits made for technicians, not soldiers." "Then we build more," Raven said. "With what seam tape? What filter cloth? Whatever we have," Raven snapped, then caught his tone softened. "We improvise or drown in cesium rain." Eugenio nodded reluctantly. "I'll scour scrap for silver thread." 2 days later, a rider arrived from the Tagus corridor half-dead with thirst. Raven knelt beside him as medics supplied saline. The courier's eyes rolled white, but he forced words. "New Dawn convoys, not south-west. Mechanics, Welva wells, seized. Joint packed." He coughed, blood flecked with dust. "They'll trade isotope bombs for gasoline." The news detonated through the refinery like internal shrapnel. Mechanics had indeed defected, taking secret backroads to join New Dawn, promising them engineering in return for a share of Raven's fuel. Sava's council shouted for immediate retaliation. Loba wanted raiding teams sent to Welva to torch the wells. Raven paced silent, listening to the swirl until Violetta touched his elbow. "Indecision kills," she murmured. He faced the hall. "We do not chase every traitor into the ocean. Our strength is the refinery. If New Dawn wants it, they must breach us. But we can undercut their alliance." He raised a schematic. "Pipeline East, our old project, extends beyond Andrada's ruins to the desal plant New Dawn holds. If we restore the far segment, we can pump brine poison laced with benzene into their water grid. No one allies with those who foul their own throats." The room fell still, jarred by the cruelty of the tactic. Sava whispered, "You'd poison civilians as well. Only if New Dawn refuses surrender. We warn communities first, give evacuation corridors." Raven's voice shook but held. "War forced on us leaves no clean choices. Debate raged late, but the vote passed narrow margin. Begin pipeline sabotage. Setup crews slipped east under dust storms, welding diverter pumps in abandoned culverts. Loba led perimeter squads fortifying trenches with fused glass shards, homemade dragon's teeth. Eugenio and Raven calibrated chemical ratios that would cripple desal membranes without lingering in soil longer than a moon cycle. That night, Raven lay sleepless in a cot inside the old control bunker. He replayed the courier's rasped message, the council's fearful eyes. Leadership had begun to taste like ash. Every decision another mouthful of compromise and sin. He pressed fingers to eyelids and saw nuclear auroras shimmering green. Somewhere beyond those veils, the world's powers still volleyed missiles. Their stray winds decided crops, cancers, futures. Yet here, in this cracked valley, one boy's decree could drown a cult or spare a child. The scale vertigoed him. He rose before dawn, walked the catwalks. Soft guitar chords drifted upward. Someone playing an old Andalusian lullaby beside the fuel drums. Raven followed the sound and found Sabriel, a refugee girl of 15 with one lung damaged by fallout, her fingers deft on a cracked spruce guitar. The melody floated fragile yet stubborn, as though the instrument remembered nights when the air smelled of jasmine. Raven listened hidden, heart a-knotted a moment. When Sabriel finished, she spotted him and flushed. He clapped softly. "Play at the next auction," he said. "Music reminds people why they trade instead of war." She laughed shy. "They pay in fuel? I'll pay in batteries for your amplifier," he promised. She beamed, a small Dawn he pocketed for later. The first clash with New Dawn came without warning 4 days after the pipeline sabotage began. Midnight haze hung thick when mortar flares popped over the northern fence, raining white sparks. Sirens cut the refinery's hum. Guards scrambled to emplacements. Loba sprinted across gantries, barking orders. Raven reached Tower 3 just as the first rocket streaked low, striking the outer tank yard with a whomp that shook distillation columns. Flames geysered skyward, ethyl ether stores. Emergency deluge valves hissed seawater harvested from the Guadalquivir. Foam cannons belched pink chemical clouds. Raven's headset crackled, Sava screaming that secondary fires threatened the hospital generator. He swung binoculars. Silhouettes in atom-black fatigues surged through olive groves, rifles slung, something bulkier on shoulders, dirty bomb shells? No, 2 small, portable neutron scatter devices. Spotlights snapped on, catching the attackers mid-stride. Gunfire stuttered. Raven grabbed a loudhailer. "Cease advance or we ignite Central Tower. That poison cloud rides west. Your encampment dies first." The lead fanatic, bare-faced, eyes glowing with some inner fever, lifted his weapon anyway. A bullet from Loba's sniper post punched him flat. The line faltered. Defenders laid suppressive fire. Within minutes, the assault broke. Survivors dragged wounded into the tree line. Searchlights swept but found only trampled dust. Casualties: 8 Commons riflers wounded, 2 dead, 1 storage tank lost, but main units intact. More damaging was morale. Radiation scare rumors roiled. Raven addressed crowd at dawn beside the smoldering tank carcass. "New Dawn believes terror grants them divinity," he said, voice raw. "We show them terror starves when we stand." He lifted a dented shell recovered from the grove, a thin canister of cesium salt rigged to a low-yield booster. Its primer thankfully failed. "They want fear. Give them ridicule. Display their dud outside the market gates. Charge a crumb of corn to spit on it." The crowd barked uncertain laughs that grew into cheering. Loba's Perros hauled the shell to a post, hammered it like a scarecrow. Children lined up with melon rinds to hurl. Tension eased, if only for an afternoon. Meanwhile, sabotage progressed. Eugenio reported the east line pressurized. Violetta's cousin Layla, recovered from the Basura ride, coded the pump controllers. At sundown, Raven sent ultimatum to New Dawn's frequency. Abandon Esija desal plant or drink their own poison. Silence answered first. Then a voice, female, cold, echo-filtered, declared, "Purification thrives in suffering. Release your toxin. We bathe gladly." Eugenio frowned. Either fanatic bluff or they possess counterfiltration. Raven stared at the console valves, hand hovering. This moment felt heavier than Andrada's rockets. Here the trigger was chemical, invisible, creeping through pipes to throats of thousands. He thought of Sabriel's lullaby, of refugees cramming courtyard. He lowered hand. We wait. Use threat as leverage, not weapon. That night distant thunder rolled, but no storm clouds. Scouts reported explosion at Welva Wells, black plume rising. Mechanics rebels and New Dawn had fought among themselves, each blaming other for a fuel theft rumor seeded by Raven's own couriers. What began as dispute turned to gunfire, igniting crude storage. Without firefighting foam, the blaze consumed the facility. 30 rebels dead, Wells crippled. Loba laughed darkly on receiving report. They do our burning for us. Raven allowed smile but cautioned. Desperation makes cornered beasts. Indeed, within 48 hours New Dawn pulsed south again, this time bearing something heavy slung under a tarp on a retrofitted bus chassis. Drone footage showed a reactor core shielding ring. A backpack nuke? Eugenio estimated yield at subkiloton, half the bombs that flattened Malaga years ago, but enough to glass a 5-kilometer radius. Raven's veins iced. If they drove that device into the refinery, all talk, all barter, ended in a sunburst. He summoned Crisis Council. Options: preemptive strike with scavenged howitzer, mines on access road, infiltration to disarm. Violetta argued for a direct sniper hit on driver. Loba wanted mines, simpler, sure. Raven thought of chain reactions. A nuke detonated outside still lethal. He suggested a decoy. We lure them onto River Bridge Andrada once used. Bridge deck rigged with shape charge charges downward. Collapse bus into water before core heats. Beneath, we flood bank with boron sludge, neutralizes neutron flux. Eugenio skeptically tapped Kane. Building such trap in time verges on miracle. Miracle built from crude and nerve, Raven said. We attempt or die. Work commenced frenzy. Volunteers hauled cement, welding rods, boron sacks pilfered from abandoned mine where it once tempered glass. Sabriel and other teens painted graffiti along detour signs. Fuel gift, an arrow pointing to bridge, seeded into rumor nets New Dawn scanned. By dusk, weird radio chatter suggested the cult bit the bait. Midnight, watchers on tower scopes saw headlamps weaving toward bridge. Raven rode ahead with Loba in calm van pseudo-disabled midspan, acting breakdown. Rain began thin, ticking on metal. Bus engine growled nearer, carrying taut silence behind it. Raven's heart drummed so loud he swore mics picked it. Cult escort truck stopped 50 meters off, loudhailer ordering van cleared. Raven and Loba stumbled out, feigning panic, sprinted opposite curb. From Hillcrest, Violetta watched through scope, thumb on detonator. The bus rumbled onto center span. Steel groaned. Raven's earpiece popped. Layla's voice, charges green. He shouted, now! Bridge deck splintered upward. Concussion hurled Raven against railing. A roar like mountains sundered. Sparks streaked. The bus plunged nose first into dark water below. Escort truck flip-turned, its cargo bed aflame. Raven crawled, ears buzzing. River hissed as boron slush released, turning waves murky white. Alarms shrieked in headset. Radiation meters spiked then dropped as slurry buried neutrons. Loba hauled him to feet. Core, she yelled. Geiger readings leveled. Eugenio, monitoring from tower, radios, no criticality. Core intact but flooded. Relief collapsed Raven's knees. Loba slapped his cheek. Later, move, cult stragglers. Gunfire cracked behind. New Dawn fighters scattered across embankment. Perros sprung from olive trunks, engaging. Short, brutal firefight ended in screams and surrender. Cult survivors knelt, wrists zip-tied, stench of river slime rising. Back at refinery dawn bled rose across clouds. News spread like Hydra fire. The boy Raven cracked New Dawn's nuke without detonation. Crowds gathered under Tower 10 where Raven, soaked, grimy, bruised, addressed them. We faced fire unholy, he said, voice hoarse yet carrying. We stood, we outwitted, we endured. This refinery is more than metal. It is covenant, share or perish. Those who threaten covenant taste our answer. Cheers thundered. Yet deep inside, Raven felt a colder truth. Each victory demanded sharper cruelty. Poison, traps, manipulation. He wielded them now with practiced fingers. Was he still the scavenger boy tasting drops on tongue? Or a warlord cloaked in ideals? Later, in bunkhouse, Sabriel sat tuning guitar. She asked softly, "Will there be quiet again?" Raven considered. Outside, generators hummed. Rat alarms clicked. Babies cried. War resumed beyond horizons. He knelt. "Not soon," he admitted. "But perhaps moments between storms. We build those moments with our hands." Sabriel nodded, began to play. Notes drifted. Fragile as ash snow but stubborn too. Raven closed eyes, letting melody stitch a quiet inside his wrecked chest. Summer heat thickened by increments. Crops in irrigated terraces greened feebly, but the commons tasted first zucchini in years. Children chased goats between solar still arrays. New dawn remnants fled east. Mechanics slowly returned, chastised, offering skills for amnesty. Sava lectured forgiveness. Loba snarled but accepted, and Raven brokered quotas binding machinists to rebuild the bridge they'd helped destroy. Yet wider dangers simmered. NATO satellites, once silent, flared to life in low-orbit beacons of a last-ditch communication net. Rumor said Washington's provisional government planned coordinated strikes on rogue nuclear states. At the same time, Chinese cyber units hijacked old EU power grids, testing command loops. Global chessboard tipping toward final gambits. Eugenio called Raven to control room one sweltering dawn. On the cracked screen scrolled telemetry from stratospheric sensors repurposed by hackers in Barcelona. "I detect triple launch signatures," the old man whispered. "ICBMs? Trajectories Atlantic-bound. Variable apogee suggests MIRV bus." Raven's blood iced. "Destination. One path solves to Iberia. Impact window 48 hours. They stared at pixel trail climbing heaven. Raven felt scales of war he'd tried ignore thunderback. The refinery, their market, specs to powers now shifting bishops and queens. Violetta burst in breathless, brandishing printouts from radio traffic. NATO command demanding evacuation of all non-combatants within Andalusia. Strike planned on rumored clandestine reactor near Seville. Suspected New Dawn site. Coordinates alarmingly close to refinery. "Friendly fire," Loba muttered. "We're collateral," Raven paced. "They shoot from across ocean. They don't know who lives here." Sava tapped Kane. "Send envoys?" Radios jammed. Eugenio's eyes brimmed despair. 48 hours not enough for mass exodus. Raven inhaled slow. "Then we prove presence unmistakably." He pointed to distillation towers. "We light sky with beacons bigger than any flare. Giant Morse across clouds. Civilians here. We hack satellites, overlay our GPS fix, flood frequencies." Layla frowned. "Morse with what? Flame?" "Electric arcs," Raven said. "We vent hydrogen, ignite controlled plasma columns, modulate shutter valves. Dash across night visible to orbital sensors." "It could explode," Eugenio warned. "Or save thousands." Raven's gaze swept room. "We either vanish silent or shout into heaven." Consensus formed brittle but firm. Workers rigged vent stacks with variable orifice plates, strung copper bus bars to Tesla coils scavenged from amusement park rides. Sabriel organized children to paint giant white latex sheets spelling SOS along pipeline fields, visible to recon drones. Every radio tower jammed out loops in English, Mandarin, Russian. Non-combatant civilian zone. Tho RDS, hold fire. On the 40th hour, clouds rolled violet over dusk. Raven climbed the primary flare stack clad in arc suit. Wind tugged cloth, sparks hissed from open valves. Below, the refinery hummed like a titan's throat preparing song. Eugenio's voice crackled, "Charge at threshold." Raven looked west where Atlantic muted sun into red smear. He thought of first taste of gasoline on teeth, of Sabriel's cords, of each life tied now to his decision. He hit the ignite. Blue-white flames speared heaven, roaring louder than rockets. He toggled shutters, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Another stack answered, repeating. Across the grounds, 6 plumes danced in orchestrated pattern, writing SOS in burning script against the low cloud deck. The heat slapped Raven's suit, aura of raw power. Sparks stung visor. Minutes passed, endless heartbeats. Radio's static silent. Then a ping. Low orbit transponder handshake. Layla screamed into mic, coordinates acknowledged. Trajectories recalculated. 1 MIRV bus aborted to safe splash. Another Ret asked to remote desert. Cheers burst through comms. Raven's knees buckled. He sank on metal grate, tears evaporating before they fell. Sky still blazed, painting refinery in holy incandescence, but survival had handwritten itself across war's ledger. When the fires finally throttled down, early dawn bruised horizon. Exhausted crews slumped against pipes. Some wept, some laughed. Raven descended ladder, feet trembling. Violetta caught him halfway, pulled visor up, kissed soot-black cheek. He managed a cracked laugh. "We screamed loud enough," she said. "World almost listened too late," he answered. In courtyard, Sava addressed assembled. "Tonight we witnessed common hands carve destiny. Remember, power resides not in missiles but in hearts aligned." Applause rippled. Yet even as Raven smiled, he glimpsed new worries. Fuel reserves depleted by beacon burn, hydrogen stocks spent, compressors overheated. Next threats would find them leaner. But dawn smelled less of fear, more of born-again hope mingled with eternal petroleum ghost. He walked alone to refinery edge. Olive groves trembled silver under newborn sun. Somewhere beyond, armies might still march, governments plot, planets tilt. But here, a ring of patched pipes circled a defiant community singing lullabies above cracked concrete. For the first time since war's roar began, Raven allowed the possibility that survival might graduate into life. He inhaled. The air tasted of soot and unburned future. Moonless dark lay over the refinery like a held breath, the kind of hush only summer's absolute midnight can summon. Raven paced the catwalk above the quiescent cracking towers, half his mind listening for the slack-belted thump that meant a pump was starving, the other half tuned to the radio hiss coming from every speaker across what once had been the Spanish South. At first the speakers spoke silence, an almost luxurious void after weeks of alarms, then a new voice, elegant Oxford vowels washed thin by static. "This is Field Liaison Commander Rebecca Iqbal of the NATO UN Ceasefire Oversight Mission. We have confirmed civilian habitation at coordinates 37.88 north, 4.78 west. Stand by for flyover verification and corridor designation." The words drifted through the towers and nothing exploded afterward. No follow-up strike, no demand to disband, no ultimatum. Just an admission from the sky's old masters that yes, people lived here and might deserve to keep doing so. Raven exhaled into the starlight, felt his shoulders sag for the first time in months. Below him hundreds slept under patch tarps and jury-rigged awnings, commons folk, returning machinists, paros who now ran perimeter shifts in exchange for honest pay. Even former New Dawn converts whose fanatic edge had snapped when their bomb drowned in boron slurry. All bound by the refinery's vascular hum. It had been 3 weeks since the SOS Infernos wrote survival across the clouds. In the lull that followed, water trucks rolled in from the Mexico aqueduct to the west, bringing word that larger powers were opening deconfliction zones. Pockets where no missile would land so long as the locals could prove non-combatant status and basic self-governance. Cordoba Valley lay right on the proposed border between World Coalition Theater West and the Chinese-backed Maghreb Protectorate. That made Raven's outpost more than a curiosity, it made it the fulcrum of a fragile armistice line. Holding it would mean new kinds of battles of charter drafts, inspection drones, and trade protocols. Loba, now captain of the Commons Guard, joked that paperwork might kill faster than bullets. But she sharpened her knives anyway, old habits kept people alive. At dawn, Council met beneath a patched tarpaulin that flapped like the mainsail of a grounded ship. Sava's gnarled hands smoothed a papery page stamped with a blue world map seal, NATO UN's first draft charter for the Cordoba Civilian Safety Corridor. It promised airdropped medical pallets, low-orbit comms uplink, 3 months amnesty from taxation if the community could elect recognized leadership, publish a fuel audit, and swear to forswear all offensive weapons larger than 30mm bore. Eugenio squinted at the fine print through grease-smudged goggles. Offensive is relative. A 30mm autocannon can be defensive if someone drives a tank at you. Raven leaned over the page. The point isn't caliber. The point is truth. We either show them we're not a rogue militia or go back onto target lists. Loba spat olive pit into the dirt. Truth is we learned to survive because we had bigger teeth than the dogs who came tearing. They'll ask to declaw us, then who protects the pumps? Sava rapped her cane. The pumps or the people, Captain? Loba's lip curled, but she kept silent. Violetta, seated cross-legged with a handheld console, flipped the screen to a satellite image. Dozens of tent cities strung along the Andalusian foothills, displaced families tracking rumors of safety. If we accept corridor status, these people flood to us. No walls big enough, but if we refuse, they flood anyway when the next army pushes them. She looked at Raven. Leadership chooses which flood drowns slower. Raven studied the image. Each speck a life, a memory. He tasted gasoline phantom on his tongue, the old ritual that once let him grade octane by guess. Now the world graded him by every sentence. We signed the charter, he said at last. But on our terms. Eugenio arched a brow. Meaning? We list our refinery as critical humanitarian infrastructure, not just economic. Fuel keeps hospitals and desal plants alive. We keep one heavy weapon per quadrant, logged and sealed, use only if corridor boundaries violated. And NATO UN shares inspection duties with our own board so no one swaps their flag for our autonomy. Sava smiled like cracked marble. A young lion who's learned to set walls around his own cage. Cages keep predators out too, Raven answered. The vote passed barely, 15-12, machinists abstaining. A courier drone lifted with the signed amendment, tiny rotors carving dawn. By week's end, the first UN relief convoy rumbled over the rebuilt bridge, 3 armored flatbeds flying white banners painted fresh, accompanied by a Dutch engineering platoon in exosuits cheapened by rust. Excitement sparked across the commons. Real vaccines, printed circuit boards for wind turbine controllers, bales of antibiotic hydrogel. Yet what caught Raven's eye was the convoy's rear, a small school bus, windows plated with mesh, engine replaced by hydrogen cells, the first civilian transport he'd seen that wasn't bristling with machine gun tripods. Inside, 20-odd children gawked wide-eyed at the refinery's grand tangle of towers like pilgrims at a steel cathedral. One girl with copper braids tapped the window, mouthing, "Is that fire?" as flares hissed overhead, burning off volatile vapors. Raven raised a hand in welcome. The bus hissed to a halt. Field Liaison Commander Iqbal stepped down, shook Raven's hand. She was younger than he'd imagined from the radio voice, maybe early 30s, fatigues impeccable, expression cut from both steel and sympathy. "Your beacon stunt forced the Security Council to redraw half their targeting grids," she said by way of greeting, then smiled. "You also saved our forward med post at La Rota. Gratitude is due." "We were shouting for our lives," Raven replied. "Sometimes that's the only honest diplomacy." She gestured to the children. "Orphans from Mercia Fallout Zone. Your charter promises them fresh start inside the corridor. Still space?" Raven's chest tightened. "We'll make space." He waved Loba over. "Quartermaster tents near the South Olive Rose." Loba grunted but strode to the bus, barking orders that somehow sounded like reassurance. The children filed out, thin shoulders squared, each carrying a sack of everything they had left. Iqbal watched, then turned to Raven. "Satellite eyes note 3 independent militias probing corridor edges. Your flanks will be tested. My platoon supports but cannot garrison permanently. Corridor success depends on internal cohesion." "Cohesion," Raven echoed, thinking of machinists still muttering about quotas, of Peros who still dreamed quick plunder, of ex-cultists wrestling guilt. "We'll show you cohesion." Night fell with a rare softness. Sabriel performed on an improvised stage atop an overturned tank turret, Violetta mixing her guitar through scavenged speakers powered by turbine surge. Children danced, even some Peros. UN engineers clapped offbeat but broad-smiled. Raven sat beside Eugenio on a pipe. "Remember first can we filled?" he asked. Eugenio chuckled. It weighed more than hope but less than fear. Raven fingered Loba's dog tag around his neck. "A whole valley runs on that hope now. I feel like a gasket about to blow." The older man tapped the steel with his cane. "Every engine needs maintenance. You, boy, must rest or seize brakes when world hands them." He nodded toward Violetta, fingers flying over the sound mixer, cheeks flushed amber by stage light. Raven's reply caught behind teeth. Loba dropped beside them with 2 tin cups of coffee. Front Scout's radio in, no hostiles within 10 clicks. I almost missed the clear purpose of bullets. She sipped, grimaced. Peace tastes like weak brew. Peace is just war using softer tools, Raven said. I know, she answered, but her eyes lingered on the dancing children. Still, maybe worth guarding. Peace's softer tools cut deep by morning. The UN auditors wanted a line-item breakdown, total crude reserves, daily throughput, emission parts per million. Eugenio rattled off figures, but Raven saw the subtext: how fast can the big powers lean on this tap? In parallel, a Chinese diplomat arrived at Southern Gate, flanked by Protectorate Marines. He brought solar micropanels as gifts and a contract offering rare earth metals for exclusive diesel rights. Raven smiled politely, declined with equal politeness, and heard the shove of history grinding a little louder. Inside, dissent took new shapes. Doria the machinist resurfaced at council to declare that since Corridor required heavy weapon disarmament, every faction should surrender inventory to a neutral vault, machinist run, naturally citing technical expertise. Loba folded arms. You'll furnish the keys? She asked. Shared encryption, Doria said without blinking. But the vault itself in our sector where tooling and climate control exist. Sava eyed him. Convenient geography. Raven intervened. No single sector. We weld an armory under the central tank yard. Equal guards from each faction, UN observers able to audit but not to seize. Doria agreed too quickly. Raven filed the speed away like a blade of doubt. That night, Sabriel's lullaby drifted over sleeping rows when a low boom jolted the refinery. Raven bolted upright, pulse skyrocketing. Sirens wobbled awake. Smoke curled above the yet unfinished armory pit. He raced down ladders 3 at a time. The blast had collapsed a gantry and cracked a feed line. Fortunately, the line was dry for maintenance, no fireball. But one guard lay bleeding, shot through the neck before the explosion. A second guard swore he'd seen a machinist badge vanish into shadows. Within hours, rumors roared like runaway compressors. Machinists claimed Perros staged sabotage to frame them. Perros swore machinists wanted pretext to seize the arsenal. Former cultists whispered both sides plotted. Children huddled, orphans' eyes wide again. Commander Iqbal stepped into the council tent before sunrise, jaw granite. If you can't police yourselves, corridor designation rescinds. My order's clear. Another incident like this and NATO will evacuate our dependents and pull support. Raven almost snapped at her. We never asked your banners to weigh us, but swallowed it. Pride was oil on a sparking cable. Instead, he asked for 24 hours to investigate. She granted 12. He convened an emergency triad, Loba, Doria, and ex-cult tech Layla as neutral forensic. They examined blast radius, angle of charges, caliber of guards, wound. Layla called up an image on her datapad, a fractal burn ring consistent with early war Chinese anti-material rounds. Perros didn't field those. Neither did machinists. But Protectorate Marines at the Southern Gate might. Loba hissed. Diplomat smiles, soldiers sabotage, corridor falls, Protectorate claims site as unstable, enters as peacekeepers. Raven felt cold clarity flood him. Bigger chess again. We arrest no machinist. Instead, we expose the ploy. How? Doria challenged, suspicion and relief tangled in his eyes. By inviting every faction to tomorrow's disarmament ceremony live-streamed via NATO orbit, Raven said. And we include a display of the recovered sabotaged round tagged to Protectorate ammo lot. Protectorate will deny, Loba warned. Let them, Raven replied. Truth sometimes only needs daylight. Sava added, and after daylight, we still must love beside those who nearly shot us. In Corridor, Raven said, forgiveness is cheaper than exile. The ceremony hovered between carnival and standoff. Under flapping UN tarp, a long steel cage waited, each weapon to be tagged and sealed. Commander Iqbal's orbit link floated on a hollow screen, military councils watching. Loba deposited Perro's best heavy machine gun. Doria's men wheeled in 2 autocannons. They looked lovingly back at the polished barrels as if surrendering pets. When it came Raven's turn, he placed a clear case in the center, the spent anti-material slug, deformed nose revealing the microtracer code of Protectorate Batch 6 Alpha. Gasps rippled. The Chinese envoy, present in immaculate linen, frowned thunderclads. Raven spoke into the mic. This slug killed our guard and tried to kill our agreement. It bears a mark that should never have fired here. He looked at the envoy. If accident, show records. If rogue gesture, help us find shooter. Corridor stands only if everyone polices everyone, including outside patrons. For a breath the envoy seemed ready to storm out. Then he inclined head minutely. Protectorate shall audit its stocks, he said, voice tempered iron, and provide culprits if discovered. Tension eased a notch. Iqbal's hollow image nodded. Global watchers saw a refinery that could check foreign schemes without splintering. The corridor survived another hour. Summer ripened into a cautious autumn. In fields between olive stumps, hydrocorn pushed green leaves through irradiated dust thanks to desal water and crude-fired irrigation pumps. UN medics inoculated the orphans. Some joined Sabriel's new fuel music troupe, singing safety drills to guitar rhythms so younger children might remember them. Raven found moments to dream bigger. He and Violetta sat on the refinery roof one cool dusk, mapping future grids on a scrap of plastic. Solar, wind, biogas, she scribbled. Phase-down schedule for crude reliance, 5 years? He laughed softly. You realize I'm the petroleum prince plotting his own obsolescence. Better self-retire than be toppled, she said, nudging him. Besides, smell of cooking oil beats smell of gasoline. You'll miss the roar of pumps. I'll miss you riding them at 3 a.m. shouting for wrenches. Her gaze settled serious. When Corridor stabilizes, will you ever sleep? Raven looked across towers silhouetted against sunset haze. Sleep? Maybe. Leave? Maybe not. Home is where you choose to fix the leaks. She threaded her fingers through his. Then here's to tight seals. Below, Loba drilled recruits not on rifle usage but on mediation tactics, how to de-escalate drunken brawls with jokes before fists. Doria's machinists partnered with ex-cult techs to fabricate low-pressure turbines that could spin off frying oil vapors, selling prototypes to passing caravans. Even the Chinese envoy sponsored a roof of mirrored heliostats once certain corridor profits beat sabotage. Yet nothing in Warlands stayed quiet long. Winter's first storms carried news. Russian Far East collapsed into separate militias and a hunk of launch authority codes leaked onto darknet markets. NATO UN intel warned anarchic strikes might originate from anywhere, detection nets strained to track every garage-built missile. In Council, Raven proposed building a community bunker deep beneath Column 7's foundations, far enough to shelter all children and at least half the adults. Loba objected the resource drain. Sava argued moral necessity. The vote tied until Doria's machinist representative lifted his hand. I once feared this place would chain us. It freed us. We build the shelter. Excavation began. Digging under a functioning refinery balanced on rust and luck felt insane, but Eugenio drafted reinforcement collars and Layla programmed sonic monitors to warn of microfracture. Day by day a cathedral of safety hollowed in bedrock. On the eve of winter solstice, with the shelter's main hatch newly fitted, Raven climbed the flare tower again. Night sky glittered with satellites and the faint pink of polar auroras. Radiation still danced, but at higher, gentler orbits now that ceasefire lines mostly held. He wondered what the future children of Cordoba would call these lights, ghost curtains, sky rivers, maybe just the afterglow. Footsteps on the ladder. Violetta joined him, breath clouding. She handed a metal can painted gold, freshly sealed. The last strip from column 3, she said. Eugenio's shutting it down for overhaul. Raven turned the can, felt its warmth. Remember when this was lifeblood? Still is, she said, but lifeblood can be transfused. We learned new veins. She nodded at the horizon where their biogas turbines blinked green. Someday the towers will retire, not explode. They watched first snowflakes tumble, radioactive levels so low Sabriel's choir would dance beneath them come morning. Raven opened the can, smelling gasoline's sharp ghost. He poured a trickle onto the walkway grate and flicked a spark. A blue flame rippled, harmless, then winked out. Farewell, he whispered, to war's first fuel, to boyhood's scavenger, to the smell that both saved and scarred them. From below rose faint music, Sabriel rehearsing a winter hymn, chords lilting against generator thrum. Loba's laughter carried, deep and genuine. Children shouted tag between sandbag pyramids. The corridor lived. Raven drew Violetta close. Wind smelled now of frost and distant orange blossoms. Someone had managed to coax a sapling in a sheltered courtyard, first bloom in a decade. The world still stank of politics, of profit, of potential betrayal, but tonight, just above the refinery, it also smelled like beginnings. He whispered, do you hear it? Hear what? The quiet between storms. It's ours for as long as we guard it. And after? After, he said, we teach the next keepers how. They stood together as snow and starlight mingled, the towers below purring not with menace but with promise, the valves inside his mind easing for the first time, just enough that, when the future called at dawn, Raven would answer rested.